Hi and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week is part 4, our final part in our Inner Child Life Lessons series, where we've been talking all about the valuable life lessons that you can teach your inner child. This week we are looking at flowing with life and how to establish Wu Wei in your life to help your inner child. Okay, David, so before we deep dive into why the inner child has difficulty flowing with life, experiencing this Wu Wei essence of life, do you want to explain a little bit about what Wu Wei is?
It's basically what you described in the introduction, Alex. Life happens, life is happening as all the time, reality, and we have to have the skill to flow and to deal with it. So the analogies that the Taoists like using is the river concept, that we're on a river and we're in a canoe as on the river, and part of this river are beautiful and meandering, and we can relax and look at the scenery. But in this river, there are also rapids and rocks and maybe a few crocodiles, and we have to learn how to deal with that. And that being is in the flow. We can't always have that pristine, calm, flowing where everything works out the way that we want it. The analogy I like as well is that sailing ship analogy, crossing the ocean on a sailing ship. We can learn to be good sailors. We can learn how to read the sea and the currents and the waves. We can spot when storms are forming. We can learn how to adapt to the storms. And we also can learn how to make good time when the wind's blowing in the right direction. And so Wu Wei is using our skill, our innateness, our spirituality to deal with the ebb and the flow and the ups and the downs of life, which will come our way.
And so, David, why is it that our inner child struggles so much with this concept?
Well, the part of the mind that we would call the inner child really finds this difficult to accept, would be the word, I think, is because it wants to be in control. It wants to know what's going to happen. It wants to know what's going to happen, and it will be able to deal with it without any problems. The inner child doesn't like issues, problems. It wants to be in that part of the river that's always serene, always flowing the way that they want it to flow. And this is the conflict. When we hit reality and the ebbs and flows of reality, the inner child has a squealing piglet, has a bit of a hissy fit and doesn't like it and plays up because it's not the way that he wants it to be.
So the inner child part of our mind always wants harmony, peacefulness, contentment, positivity in all aspects of our life. So our work, our family life, our relationships, our health.
I'm smiling because it's a little bit more defined than that. The inner child wants what it wants, when it wants it, and how it wants it. So whatever the inner child perceives that life should be, easy, no problems, everybody loving them, everybody agreeing with them, everybody adoring them, whatever it is, enough money to manage. When they want to do something, the weather's fantastic. They're never upset by bad weather or anything at all, delays in travel, in the airport. Everything should go the way that they want it to go. And of course, that immediately hits a brick wall because that's not the way that life is. And so how they deal with it is by using the emotions.
And so when we hold on to these beliefs that everything should be the way we want it to be, this creates incredible emotional discomfort for us.
Absolutely.
And blocks us and stagnates us because we spend all our time and energy trying to control the uncontrollable or being dissatisfied because things aren't the way we want them to be.
That's exactly right. And one more I would add into that. The inner child really likes the known, familiarity. And so one of the things it really is trying to get is that familiar, that it knows the outcomes before the outcomes happen. Mm-hmm. So it knows that it's going to be able to cope. It knows that it's not going to be embarrassed. It knows that people is going to do this job wonderfully well. So as well, the inner child part of our mind really dislikes the unknown. Then the problem is, of course, we live in the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't even know what's going to happen in the next hour, next minute, next week, next month. And so the inner child immediately dislikes that and tries to maneuver us onto the known path. And this is what a lot of my clients really misunderstand. It will choose the known path even if it's unsuccessful, because the unsuccess is known to it. Mm-hmm. And so it will always choose the known path.
And so, David, what I'm hearing here is our inner child gets stuck on seeking perfection in itself and the external world. Mm-hmm. And it also gets stuck on wanting to know the unknowable. And that on both counts, if our inner child learns a measure of acceptance and being at peace with imperfection, would that be the right word? Or just things as they are?
Things as they are.
And acceptance and inner peace with not knowing things, that not being able to control and not being able to know things that are out of its control. If we can accept that and learn a measure of trust in the process, then that would somehow provide the solution on both of those counts.
That's right. I think you've used two important words there in the Wu Wei Wisdom teaching, is trust. Trusting in the process, trusting that anything that is going to come your way, you will cope with it. So the inner child will give you one of the three lies: I can't cope, it's too much for me, I'm overwhelmed, I'm hitting a brick wall, my emotions are too strong, you can't deal with these emotions are overwhelming, oh, there's something wrong with you, you're having heart palpitations, let me give you a diagnosis. And so it will try and control you by that way. And the next one is acceptance. So the inner child will not like the idea of acceptance, because for the inner child's viewpoint or view of the world, acceptance sometimes means that it's not in control. It has to go and it has to trust and be with the flow, and it has to accept that things don't always work the way that it would want it to work, and it has to adapt. So those concepts for the part of the mind that we're calling the inner child, the childlike part of our mind, is going, if you have physical children and you tell them that bedtime is 9 o'clock, they don't always agree and go to bed with a smile as on the face, particularly if there's something on TV that they want to watch. They'll kick off, they'll create emotions, they'll cry, they'll shout, they'll scream, they'll go and lock themselves in their bedroom. They'll do lots of things to get their own way. And that's why I really find the concept and the analogy and the metaphor of the inner child very helpful, because that part of your mind, it doesn't matter how mature and intelligent and successful you are, that part of the mind is still acting like a 6, 7, 8-year-old child, wanting their own way, stamping the foot and putting their arms across their chest, and I'm not going to do that, and this is how it this is how it works. And then you have this conflict, this tug of war, which is directly opposite to Wu Wei, being in your flow. You're out of your flow. If you want to use the analogy of the river, you've turned the canoe around and you're going against the current now.
And I think, David, that obviously our inner child perceives there is safety and comfort and familiarity in control, in trying to manipulate, in trying to know things that can't be known. But I'm wondering whether there's merit in teaching our inner child that with being open-minded, with releasing the need for control, with embracing uncertainty, that actually there are also benefits in that, because you're then in the slipstream of the universe, the universal flow, and you open your eyes to more opportunities that you would otherwise close off from, and that it's actually a process of not losing something, you're not foregoing control or safety. You're actually gaining something by switching your approach to life. You're gaining an openness and awareness and a personal availability almost to life's opportunities.
And what you're describing there, Alex, is what we call reparenting.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is why I never, in inverted commas, blame the inner child. Because the inner child, if they've never had this spiritual teaching of the unknown is actually exciting, is where they can really express themselves. In the unknown is where their creativity can flourish. If they've never had that teaching from their childhood, then how do they know about it? And most of the inner children that I work with my clients are extremely stubborn, and they don't want to change because they don't want to take as any risk. So they're not going to change by their own volition. You have to give them the education. You have to deal with their queries and their problems, and you have to answer their questions. But more importantly, you have to metaphorically hold their hand and to do it as a team. And because the inner child really wants, although it will sometimes present itself as a kind of a monster and that it really is a child. And that's from these 4 life lessons. I want you to really consider that part of your mind is not your enemy. It's not a monster. It's not the devil sitting on your shoulder. It's a frightened, scared little child huddled in the corner of a cellar, and it doesn't know what to do. It's doing its best job with the information that it's been given. Our job through these teachings, through you understanding, is going down and re-educating that child, but with love, with compassion, with sincerity, with an openness, with an ease, being able to answer its questions about what it sees as the scary world out there that's out to get them, and they have to huddle down and avoid and manipulate. And this is what they've been doing for several years. It would be unreasonable for us to consider that they're going to change that on day one. They won't. They will give you immense feelings, which can seem overwhelming. And why they do that is testing you, really, to see whether you'll give up, whether they can rely on you, whether they can stick by you, whether what you're telling them you're going to stick with. And this is part of being in your Wu Wei flow, is your truth, your honesty, and your integrity. Because the thing that binds you together in this model of Wu Wei wisdom is what I call Shen, your spirituality. You have innate wisdom. You have innate value and worth. You may call it your intuition or your inner knowing or your inner sense, but you've always had it. No one can take it away from you. And when you can sit with a child and really embrace that child with love and compassion and kindness and answer its questions and then you can become a team together and you can find a way out of this dark place that they're trapped in.
Okay, thank you, David. And I think some of the points that you mentioned there about the inner child reparenting and trusting that wise part of you and trusting that you can be there for your inner child as a wise guiding spiritual parent really comes into play, particularly on this Wu Wei teaching. And of course, we covered all of these inner child work and inner child reparenting issues in our earlier series, which I will put a link to on our 4-part inner child work series. So please do check that out. I will also put a link in the show notes to other long form teachings we've done on the Taoist principle of Wu Wei and how it is so beneficial, so empowering to your life. I really, really hope you have enjoyed this teaching and enjoyed this whole series. Please do comment and let us know, and perhaps share it with someone else who you think it may also help. David works every week with clients all over the world on exactly these sorts of issues. If you'd like to learn more about David's one-to-one consultations, do check out the link in the show notes for those as well. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new long-form teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 midweek short snippets of wisdom for you to enjoy. So do subscribe. We look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Bye-bye.